I know you're all here tonight for these three, so I'm really excited to introduce them. Obviously, we have David Chun. I'm going backwards. So David is the writer. I'm gonna showcase their stuff because we have a lot of merchandise from these guys, and it's all upstairs and purchasable at our shop. So David is the writer of Monkey and Peach, and which is about the illustrious Peach and Monkey Warrior, kind of, sort of.
Yeah, sort of.
That's where you're getting the title.
Sure, yeah.
Sure, maybe.
No, it's about sorry, I'm blanking right now. So I based it off of an ancient Japanese folktale, Peach Boy. That's why Peach, and then basically that's where the peach comes. And then Monkey is the other character who's in his little trope. So it's Monkey and Peach because I focused it on those two.
Okay, so not what I thought.
No,
not what I thought. I totally embarrassed myself. Okay, so this is new. It came out in August, and it's available in our shop now. Also, please follow David's work. Monkey and Peach is on Instagram under Monkey and Peach Comic, and then Westbound Comics is the website. And then we have Jerry Ma pictured here. Let me make sure I get everybody's stuff right. So we have both of these, and then we have the other legend, right, upstairs.
Yep.
We have both of them. And this one, which is awesome, it's featuring all kinds of his different art.
I saw some Star Wars in there.
There is some Star Wars, so kids, some Star Wars. And, of course, the legend himself, we have Larry Hama here, creator of G.I. Joe. So yeah, claps, right? Big claps. Yeah. And tonight only, one night only, we have this very special G.I. Joe figurine made and designed on different bodies. So make sure to get a unique one by Sucklord, who is here. The Sucklord,
I'll have you know that all those G.I. Joe bodies were the ones I had when I was a kid.
So it's really, it's a collector's,
with a lot of power.
It's a collector's item from a collector.
Only 30 million.
Yeah, so tonight only, make sure to go purchase these or chat up Sucklord about seeing all of them and purchasing them on a later date. But yeah, and I'll let you guys take it away from there. Big round of applause, everybody, for our...
What?
How do you want to start?
Yeah, hi, I guess. I really don't. Why am I starting? Okay, so I just started a year ago, so I'm the most inexperienced. So I guess we'll start with me, apparently. I'm a writer. That's basically it. I grew up loving comics, reading comics, X-Men, DC, everything. I grew up in Queens, New York, so basically what I would do, because Queens isn't as fancy as Manhattan is, on weekends I would just go to my local comic shop, pick it up, and just window read, and then go home, sleep, wake up, do the same thing over and over again. I loved comics growing up, and then as I got older, I was just I want to make my own. Let's, do this. And I had a friend in college who was a fantastic artist. He drew my book. He's in the back. Hi, Ham. Yeah. And we kind of did this, had the inception for a story last July, finished the script in October, and then we launched a Kickstarter in February, and then here we are, yeah. And at first, we only wanted $500, but then I happened to work at Jerry's Comic-Con booth. He'll be there again this year at booth 2010. Come say hi. And he was just why are you only asking for $500? And I was well, I'm some nobody who's never written anything in my life. And he was well, that's stupid. Ask for more money. And I said, all right, why not? Worst case scenario, I failed. I tried. Luckily, I didn't fail. And here we are. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
We made 7.5K. It's not that bad, considering we're two, nobodies. Pretty good. I mean, like, Hama is a talented artist. He was featured by, like, Fortnite's official Instagram. He has, like, 10K followers. So I was just like, well, if we get, like, 5% of them, just scrounge a couple dollars here and there. Luckily, we did better than that. I don't know. Yeah, that's pretty much it for me, I guess. I don't know. I mean,
Well, I guess the reason why we're actually here is because well, I would hope everyone likes comics, right? I think comics in general have become a big part of mainstream pop culture now, right? It's okay to say you read comics nowadays, whereas growing up, I was kind of embarrassed to like break out my comic on the subway. Now, like, I see girls being like, what the,
What were you reading?
I grew up, the first comic I read was Power Man and Iron Fist. So, and then from there, actually, the next comic I read was G.I. Joe #2. I don't know why. #2 was the first one I read, and I was hooked on it. And then, so it's kind of cool to throw a couple drinks back with Larry here every once in a while.
Well, I had always wanted to be a fashion designer. I had a subscription to Vogue when I was in the 6th grade. So I went to the High School of Art and Design here in Manhattan, and on the first day, I'm in the lunchroom, and this tall black kid comes up to me, and he says, "Hi, do you like comics?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, I do." And then he started talking to me about comics, and he said, I know a real comic artist. You want to go visit a real comic artist? And I know the people up at MAD, and I know the people up at we can go visit these places. And me being, not outgoing very much, I just sort of tagged along. And that's how I met Wally Wood, through this guy, J.D. Smith, who actually did not ever go into comics. He was a trombone player. I think he was with the Parliament Funkadelic for a while. And then he became a custom knife maker in Boston, and teaches metallurgy at BU. But I was interested in comics. I was still more interested in fashion. And then a friend of mine at Art and Design got busted for something, and he was put in the Spofford Youth House up in the Bronx. And so he takes a spoon and sharpens it on the concrete and cuts through the screen and makes a rope out of sheets, and he escapes from the youth house in the middle of the night. He comes knocking on my door in Queens. I'm living, so I'm in high school. I'm living with my mom. And he says, "Hide me, hide me." So I hid the guy in the basement for like 3 days, and then I said, "Look, my mom's going to do the laundry." She's going to come down into the basement. We got to get you out of here. So I got him. I convinced this cartoonist Larry Ivy to put him up, and Larry Ivy wanted to get him off of his couch, so he fixed him up with Wally Wood. He became Wally Wood's assistant, and so after I got out of the Army, well, first of all, I had a job. My first job was drawing shoes, because I wanted to be a fashion designer, for Sears, Roebuck, Montgomery Ward, and J.C. Penney catalogs. It was a place called William Becker Studios. It's all 5 floors, artists, photographers, retouchers. None of this exists anymore. And I sat in a room with 2 other guys, and all we did was draw shoes all day. And so I got drafted out of that job. When I came home from the Army, I didn't want to go back to drawing shoes anymore. And this guy, Ralph, he says that, you know, the guy that broke out of Youth House, he's now getting some comic work. So he said, why don't you come over, you know, we'll start a studio, and you pencil and I'll ink, you know, because you can pencil faster than I can ink, and I can ink faster than you can pencil, and we can make some money. And I said, oh, that sounds cool. I think maybe that's a good thing for me to do for about a year or so until I figure out what I really want to do. And then 50 years later, I'm still doing it. So that's how I got into comics, completely from the back door. And the wonderful thing about comics is that I got help from the artists every step of the way. There was no backbiting. There was no perception of race or color. All they cared about was whether you could draw or not, you know, and that was the bottom line, you know. And if you could draw, everybody was ready to help you because, you know, most comic book artists are fans themselves, and they like to see good stuff. So they're really supportive. Unlike, I mean, I worked in advertising for a while. That was like totally like cutthroat and nasty. And, you know, and I was an actor for a while. What I liked about drawing for a living is that you go in and you show your stuff, and it's your work that they look at, you know. If you're an actor, you go in and they look at you, you know, and it's like, hey, you're too short, you're too what, you know, whatever, you know, you're not the right blah, 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 and right off the bat, you know. But with the arts, you just, you know, show the work, and that's it. Questions?
What do you think of the G.I. Joe movies, Larry?
What?
What do you think of the G.I. Joe movies?
Well, they paid me to be consultant on the first one, and
The first one too, right?
yeah, well, only in the extra disc. You know, they cut out my scene.
Art teacher in high school art and design when you attended?
My illustration teacher was Bernie Krigstein, who was a legendary EC comic artist. And he created just about every storytelling and visual trick that all the artists still use today, you know, because he was a maniac. You know? I mean, EC comics, the way they were done was there was a 6-panel grid. That was it. 6 equal panels on a page, and it was written and lettered before it went to the artist. You know, so the balloons were already there, and the artist, all he had to do was like draw in the blank space. Well, Bernie Krigstein didn't like that, you know, so he would cut out the balloons, and if you wanted to make a 16-panel page out of a 6-panel page, sometimes he had to cut out individual letters because they wouldn't pay to re-letter. You know, he had to use the lettering that was there, right? And he did a story called The Master Race, which is amazing. It's, in it, he invented all the real solid storytelling forms that everyone uses today. He utilized time compression, he utilized cinematic techniques. You know, instead of showing, you know, a guy getting shot and then, you know, lying on the ground in the next panel, he did like 6 panels, sliver panels in a row. He wanted to show the guy falling off a subway platform onto the tracks, and it was like, boom, 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 you know, 6 shots, you know. He did in one panel, he showed a guy standing on a subway platform and the train speeding by in the background. In a still frame, he did it by having the guy in the foreground, be solid, and then having all the people in the train repeat across the page, just wildly inventive. And it's all in one 8-page story, That's like a textbook. I forgot what the question was, but but this is what you get.
Actually, Larry, can you tell everyone about the silent issue from G.I. Joe? Like the background, because I know the answer, so I think it's a really good story. But how that came to be, how you ended up drawing that issue, how you ended up writing it.
Well, it was Denny O'Neil, the editor, used to his desk was like stacks and piles of stuff, had pages and scripts and, books and comics, and like stuff would get lost in it. I think he lost an entire issue or something, or, it was misplaced, and we had to make up an entire issue in 3 weeks. And usually it's like, you got 2 to 3 months, right? And I said, 3 weeks? Starting from nothing, right? So I told him, look, if I write it and pencil it, at least do the breakdowns at the same time, that saves 2 weeks. And if I construct the story in such a way that we don't need lettering, we save another whole week because it doesn't have to get sent out to the letterer, So that's what I did. I wrote and drew the 22-page story in 3 days. Started on a Friday, handed it in on a Monday.
This is like one of the most iconic comics of all time. I believe.
What?
How many hours? 20 hours? 20
No,
hours?
I went to sleep. I could do about 7 pages of breakdowns a day, 7 to 8 pages, I don't tell the comic book companies that, Yeah, never tell them how fast you are. We had, and I was able, I did fairly tight breakdowns. Comics are like, the pay schedule is like there's full pencils, that's the highest rate, and then breakdowns, and then layouts, and then shakedowns, or something like that, And they said, well, who can ink this? And I said, well, Steve Leialoha, he's the tallest Hawaiian I've ever met. And he's in San Francisco. And I said, well, we got a FedEx at San Francisco? And I said, yeah, but, he can do it. He can turn it around. And that's how we did it. And we had to color it as the pages came in, so.
So silent issue, just so you guys know, it's basically, comics have word balloons and thought balloons, all that stuff. The silent issue was really iconic because there were no words at all. And it was just about Snake Eyes, like breaking into Cobra and doing whatever he had to do. And it became like one of the most iconic comics of all time.
Don't you also find out in that issue that Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow are related in some way? Isn't that the
Well, yeah, but see,
with the tattoos?
We
right?
do have the source. So.
the thing is, I write, I don't call myself a writer because I don't really write. I do the whole story in my head as a series of pictures. And then when I sit down at the word processor, I'm just describing the pictures. So I just forgot what you said.
Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so here, that's the thing, is that like, I write I write and draw page by page. I do not know what's on page 3 until I get to page 2, That way, I can't telegraph anything, You know, I've read so many books and comics and seen so many things where, you know, after 5 minutes or after the first 3 pages, you go, oh, I know how this ends. You know, you can figure it out. And, you know, this is why I like Cormac McCarthy. You know, you read Cormac McCarthy, and like at the end of every chapter, you go, what the hell? You know, it's like, it's, you know, totally surprising, and that's what I like to do, you know. So I got to the middle of the story, and I had both characters in a fight, and their sleeves get torn, and their forearms are exposed, and I said, well, what can I do with that? And I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if they both had the same tattoo, you know? So I had used the I Ching hexagram in Iron Fist on the breastplate of Lei Kong the Thunderer. What I liked about I Ching hexagrams is that they're really graphic, and so I knew that if I had to choose one for these characters, I had to do one that I could remember, you know. So I chose one that was alternating, you know, broken and solid lines, with the broken line on top, which is hexagram 63 in the I Ching, which is called before completion. Okay, hexagram 64 is after completion. You know, hexagram 64 is the same hexagram flipped over. In I Ching, the placement of the lines is very important. You know, everyone knows what the I Ching is.
Sure.
Right, okay.
64 hexagrams. The trigrams.
Right. So I put these hexagrams on the characters' arms, and I had no idea why it was there and what they represented or whatever. And 3 issues later, I had to come up with the entire backstory, you know. So, you know, people go, you know, people always complain about, you know, fixing stuff in reverse, you know, in comics and retconning. And I tell them, look, the entire G.I. Joe run is completely retcon. You know, it's just, because I make it up as I go along. I've never read a single thing that I've ever done after I handed it in any form. So, you know, and it's really difficult to remember 268 issues of continuity. So sometimes I'll write a story and like, oh, people will go, well, that character died in issue 62, you know? And I say, well, no, he didn't. You know, it was all a ruse. It was to fool the Russians. You know? But that's the way I've always done it, and that's the reason why, for the 155 issues of my entire Marvel G.I. Joe run, there's not a single coming attraction, because nobody knew what the next issue was going to be, including me. Okay, I feel like I'm monopolizing this. Like,
First of all, thank you for all the work that you've done. I just really admire you. When you first started drawing G.I. Joe, given the climate, et cetera, how did you decide how he looked or his race? And was there any pressure at all that G.I. Joe had to be white or look a certain way? And was there any self-referencing?
No, you have to understand that, like, I didn't design the look of the characters. Okay, there was a sculptor designer at Hasbro named Ron Rudat. He designed all the outfits and everything. They would send me a drawing, you know, before I even went into the, you know, the maquette stage. And I mean, the first year there were 10 of them, and they were just labeled infantry guy, you know, mortar guy, commando, right? The commando was a money-saving idea, because they thought, well, if we make one of the figures just black plastic and there's no paint, it's just solid black, you know, we save 50% of the cost.
I never knew that's why.
That's why. Yeah, so I had to take these lumps, you know, and give them a name and figure out a background for them, and you know, in 10 characters, I mean, that was more characters than the Avengers had, you know, and you know, I noticed that everybody at Marvel was always complaining about working on the group books, you know, because you had to memorize all these outfits, and there'd be, in each panel you'd have to draw like, you know, 6 or 7 characters or something. It was like, everybody just wanted to, the dream book is like Moon Knight. He's like completely white. There's no, you know, people don't understand the viewpoint of the people that actually had to do it, you know. Like, you know, Spider-Man is a bitch to draw. He's got, you know, all these webs, you know, and they have to, like, you know, be drawn to like contour his body. And the thing is, nobody, and I swear this is true, nobody can remember which way the web things curve. Right? You have to, everybody has to look it up, because like your mind blanks it out, you know? So I thought, oh my God, you know, like it's 10 characters to begin with, and then they're going to add 10 more. I mean, how am I going to keep track of this? That's why I came up with these file cards. I did these dossiers on each character, you know, so that I could keep track of who they were. And I had them out on my desk, and the guys from Hasbro came over, and they said, oh, wow, this is really cool. We should put this on the back of the package, you know? And that's how it started. And that sort of became the industry standard, that you couldn't do an action figure without having a file card on the back. But that was all like an accidental thing of this guy walking past my desk and seeing my dossiers out there. A lot of the things happen like that, you know.
So the characters you drew them on experience, or just imaginary?
Almost every single character is based on somebody I know. Yeah, because it was my way of keeping track and not and keeping them consistent. You know, if I based, you know, a character on my cousin Randy, you know, if he wasn't speaking like him, then it would ring a bell, you know. And it was really easy to you know, maintain a genuine consistency, you know, throughout the whole thing. And it also really helped in the writing, because you get to a point in the story where there's a conflict, and then, you know, part of your writer mind says, okay, I'm doing choreography. I'm making these characters, you know, march along these paths, you know, to this conclusion. So your job is to get them to, you know, the last page, and that's where it all can go wrong, because it's very easy to like violate the character just to make it get to that point, you know. But I've gotten to that point so many times, and I said, you know, Randy wouldn't do that. And all of a sudden, I'm having to change the entire thing that I had mapped out, because I got to that point and realized that it didn't make any sense. But I think that if you want to be true about the writing, you have to be able to make that choice, you know. Those choices that you make, they pertain to everything, you know, to music, to acting, you know, everything I've ever done. Did I answer the question?
Can I ask a follow-up question? I mean, I grew up playing with G.I. Joe, and the other two toys at the time were Star Wars and He-Man. And even as a kid, I did recognize how much more sort of like culturally and ethnically diverse the G.I. Joe toys were. Like every wave had at least one black person, a woman, and a couple other minorities, like a Native American or a Hispanic. Was that, and it was very distinct from like Stars, which had Lando Calrissian and that fake Bespin guard. For some reason, Star Wars so white, hashtag. Was that like a conscious decision by Marvel and Hasbro to be more ethnically diverse?
Yes, it was a decision by Hasbro, and I tried to reinforce it, you know, by not delegating those characters to, you know, really minor roles. You know, I brought Storm Shadow and Stalker right up to the front, you know, and they're two of the most important characters, aside from Scarlet and Duke, let's say. And the other thing that I tried to do was I had a map of the United States, and I'd stuck pins in it, and I would make sure that the hometowns of all the Joes were really like, I tried to hit every state. And, you know, I had a real plan, you know, but I was also like naming the characters, you know, the file names after people I knew, you know. And one day, I think in the third or fourth year, the Hasbro people figured out that I was naming the characters after people I knew. And they said, well, how could, you know, he shouldn't be able to get away with that. We should change the names of people we know, like us. You know? So that one year, all the Joes came from Pawtucket, Rhode Island. You know, and I went up there and I said, wait a minute, you know, you guys are totally missing the point. You know, you can't have them all come from Pawtucket. You know, they're like, but that's where we live. That answer your question?
Tunnel ratism, where did that backstory come from? The Chinese Trinidadian from Brooklyn?
Well, you know, that's Charlie Chin.
Isn't Tunnel Rat the toy? Isn't the face?
Well, I used, you know, I used Charlie Chin's background because, you know, I knew Charlie, and it was interesting background, you know. It wasn't, you know, run-of-the-mill. And when they did the sculpt of the figure, they hired this guy in Brooklyn who was the guy who did the holograms for the Visa cards. He did the little dove, you know. And holograms have to be the exact same size as what they're reproduced as. So that dove on that credit card is like that big, you know. So they figured, oh, he'd be a great guy to do the heads, you know. So they had him do, you know, sculpt all the heads one year, and they based all the heads on people at Hasbro, you know, and I got included. So the guy came to my office and he took Polaroids and he, you know. But the thing is, you know, on a head that small, you know, after like 5 generations of like, you know, going through the molding process, it still looks like a lump, you know. But it was an Asian lump at least.
This is like for you guys. This is a problem I have every time, especially with all these Marvel movies that come out. They keep introducing all these heroes, you know, superheroes. I'm waiting for the Asian superhero. Have you guys ever considered or introduced an Asian superhero? So super that we haven't known about it for 50 years or 100 years. It pops out of nowhere like, you know, like breaking that culture, you know, just, we don't see it, you know. I see almost every ethnic superhero out there. You have a Jewish superhero, Superman. There's an Israeli guy with the last Avengers where they had the guy that hops around. He's really feature coming up, and I was like, maybe it's our turn coming, it's like Ant-Man. I said, oh, come on. We can come up with something. But have you guys ever considered introducing an Asian-based character? You know, Bruce Lee is like, what, 60 years, 70 years ago? We have to get someone to look up to.
Isn't Shang-Chi?
Yeah, I mean, they are making a movie now.
Yeah, they're doing Shang-Chi.
Yeah.
Nobody tells me anything.
And they cast an Asian actor as Snake Eyes for the new Snake Eyes movie. So, you know.
I mean, they had that Kung Fu Hustle. It's really, really good, but that's Hong Kong.
Well, you know, I was never a superhero guy, you know. I was more, I'm a duck man. You know, I really wanted to do funny animals, and I never got a chance to do it. So, you know. Well, Bucky O'Hare. And I was just in LA on Tuesday and Wednesday talking to people about a Bucky project, so maybe we'll get a feature.
So like, I guess about 10 years ago, I think, I made a book called Secret Identities with Jeff Yang, Keith Chow, and Parry Shen. So we did a book on, it was what do you call those things?
Graphic novel?
Anthology graphic novel, excuse me. Featuring Asian American creators making original Asian American heroes. So we won a couple awards and we did a second book. We spoke at a lot of schools about it and stuff. I think they have the book upstairs actually.
Yeah.
So you know, we tried to do it. You know, we've done it. A lot of my work, at least, I try to make a Asian American protagonist always. You know, but you know, I think slowly it's coming around. You know, I think Shang-Chi will help. At least it'll get some more. I think it'll get people used to seeing Asian American faces on TV and in theaters. Yeah.
In that direction.
Yeah, you know, at least people slowly get used to seeing more than just, you know, Asian women prostitutes and Asian men, you know, martial artists, you know, like, so, or tech guys, you know, the IT guys always Asian, right? So I do think it'll help get people used to it. I don't think it's going to be amazing, but well, I'm scared that Shang-Chi's just going to be a bad kung fu movie.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Because
That's always the word.
Yeah.
But you know, there are a lot more Asian X-Men characters than you think. It's just that, you know, that image artist style, you can't tell they're Asians. You know, there was one female character, you know, Psylocke, you know. Somebody said, that Asian character Psylocke. I went, what? You know, I've actually had to write her on occasions, and it never occurred to me that she was Asian because of the way she was drawn.
So, how was the you mentioned awards? You came out with a comic anthology, but how was the reception in general from people, and then also from the business side? Like, were people interested in doing more? Did you publish it as an indie comic?
No, so we were picked up by the New Press, which is like a non-profit organization. So, you know, there wasn't much money involved, obviously. But we did the first book. It's really funny. So I was at a Wizard World Philadelphia Comic Convention. This is, I don't even know how long ago. I think it was like 14 years ago. I was just sitting in Artist Alley, and then this guy walked by. And you guys know, like in Artist Alley, you know, everyone tells you like their great idea, like, you know, oh, you're perfect for this. We're gonna do so many things together. You're like, cool, thanks, man. And then this like chubby Chinese guy walks up to me, and he sees me drawing Bruce Lee. He's like, hey, like, you want to make like an Asian superhero? I'm like, yeah, well, yeah, you know, I got like 10 here, you know. And then he's like, well, I was talking with Jeff Yang, and I don't know if you guys, I'm hoping you guys know who Jeff Yang is. He's like the founder of A Magazine. He writes, I mean, he's essentially the go-to Asian American resource guy for America. And then when I heard Jeff's name, I knew it was kind of legit. So I actually was like, well, yeah, let's talk about it, you know. And then we just started. So we literally just started with a phone call, and then we put out an open call for entries on angryasianman.com, which was literally like that's like legitimized us. So like we need a proof of concept. So I had to do the first story, which was our proof of concept to show to other creators. And then we got, it was just the three of us at the time. And then we got one entry from Parry Shen, who, I don't know if you guys know who he is. Yeah, he's the star of the movie Better Luck Tomorrow, which is like the first Asian American film made in America. And he's now in General Hospital, but once he jumped on, we literally just we peer pressured him into becoming our fourth partner for it. And then because of Parry, we ended up getting a lot of actors and different types of people submitting stories to it. And we just, then because Jeff is a very noteworthy author, he was like, well, I know the guys at the New Press, like, why don't we just ask them to publish it? And then they gave us some money to do it, so we were able to pay everyone. And then we thought that was it. But then this, I can't believe I forgot the name of the foundation. I ended up dating the girl that gave us this award. So she emailed us and like, do you guys want to do a second book? And we're like, not really. It took us like 3 years to do the first one, you know? She's like, well, we're having like a contest for projects that we think are worthy, and if you win, you guys are gonna get $25,000 to make the book. And we were like, I don't know, like we don't have anything, you know? She's like, if you guys submit it, you're going to win. Okay, we'll come up with a concept, you know, we'll make another book. So like that's the only reason why we made a second book was she was like, just do it, you're gonna win, you know?
Hey, you guys draw G.I. Joe? Draw G.I. Joe.
Oh, draw G.I. Joe?
Yes.
What?
We're ready for you.
Let's draw Snake Eyes, Larry?
You want me to actually work?
We've all been waiting for this. So we want 3, right?
Yeah, David's a writer, but he's gonna.
Yeah. Get ready for like the best drawing ever. From yours truly, yeah.
Yeah. If you guys, do you guys want to get up and switch out a little bit? Make some room. And then,
I'm gonna put you to work, Larry.
all the work. This is the real test. We're all going to draw G.I. Joe.
Well, G.I. Joe is the name of the organization. So what are we drawing? Are we going to do Snake Eyes, I guess?
Snake Eyes or Storm Shadow?
And this would be what, like 15
Cobra
times?
Commander, Cobra Commander. Give us some villains, you know?
Sergeant Striker.
Got the best bad guys.
Punisher, Larry.
You got the best villains.
Punisher.
The G.I. The snake with the fucking no face.
Punisher, Larry.
We're starting.
Oh, all right.
And time.
There you go.
Oh, David, that's so sad.
You know what? This is the best I can do. There, that's Snake Eyes. I got the visor down, right? It's something.
David, bring your artist up.
Yeah, David.
Yeah, so as you can see, this is how all my storyboards were for my artist. And you could tell it was really easy to bring this to life. It wasn't an effort for him at all.
Keep it simple.
Put a G.I. Joe logo.
Oh yeah, that's perfect. I'm gonna just write it out. At least I can say I was the fastest. Oh yeah.
All right, man, come over. Take over. Do it really quick, man. It's Larry's kicking your ass. I don't know, I can see it. You can see it, right? I can see it. I think it's perfect.
It's all on the eyes.
He's got the grenades going across his chest, right?
Draw some grenades on his chest.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah. That's a great idea. You draw a pineapple, right? There you go. Should I draw another one, or let's get another one in there?
Don't really mess this one up.
Not too many to grab.
And then you got swords, right?
Yes.
Yes, thank you for reminding me.
There you go.
Wow, Larry does it so easy. Jerry, look, you're
Larry's
constipated.
doing it with one hand in his pocket.
Yeah, I know, man.
I'm doing one hand. Doing one hand. Okay, time's up.
Don't pressure them more than I've already.
That's Jeff. Jeff Lee, everyone. And Haley, you can archive this in MoCA. Except for David's. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Early stages.
Man, Jerry, that guy's been working out.
Is that just his bare skin?
His cheap black plastic.
Man, Larry got added a gun, man.
These guys.
This is how we work. This is how we work.
Little.
Yeah, right.
There you go. Let's draw some bullets there.
I need bullets. Larry got a big one.
Yeah, right, that's, yeah, that's, oh, yeah, no, I really think he is. Otherwise, very thanks.
That's a lie.
No, no, no.
Until March, we can't paint it. It's a lot of.
Oh, God, Jerry, what's
Hey, that's the sign. Come on.
No, there's a pouch there.
Kind of ran out of space for his hands.
Scroll left, no hands.
Yeah.
There's plenty of room in David's office.
Yeah. Eight pads right there.
Grenades and
Pouch.
swords.
Give him some huge shoulder pads.
He's got two swords, right?
Yeah. Let me give him his second sword there. Yeah, that's too bad. Dimensionality. There you go. I know he doesn't have shoulder pads, but I just wanted to add something else. Let's give him a smile, you know? Just because he's a ninja, he doesn't have to be so sad like that.
I need to
There you go.
an expression to make.
Give him some dimples right there. There you go.
Don't forget to sign it.
Sign it.
Yes.
Sign it, sign
Oh,
it.
I'll sign this thing.
Sign it. It'll be archived. Just sign it. Don't be.
What arts would it?
School of Arts.
Yeah.
He drew two guns, man.
Oh, running out of paper. I'll have to draw the gun in recoil.
What art school did you go?
My house.
See?
School of Being right there.
It's just very difficult.
Yeah. I got catch. Let's draw some speed lines on there. Speed lines.
He's got a dog. He's got a dog.
Oh, he's got a dog, right?
You can tell how many edits we make when we draw a comic.
drawing?
I did, right?
Where's the tail?
It's off the page, see? Angle.
Draw it on the wall.
He's running.
Yeah.
You'll narrate through a bullet case and come down and run.
I did too, look.
No, that's good. That's good. That's funny.
Let's draw him a little hawk friend.
American flag.
Oh, yeah.
Don't forget the file card, Larry.
All right, keep your eye on eBay tonight. Out of charity.
Yay.
MoCA fundraiser.
Well, you do have the Gale coming up with time.
Yeah, right.
Give it a hand, guys.
Larry, how weird was it, or for you to draw this size when you're normally drawing this size? Or is that, is it harder, or is it just the same thing, or?
It's all the same. You know, many years ago, I worked with the City Arts Workshop, and we did a whole series of murals here in Chinatown. We did one in Chatham Square, and most of the work on that was building the scaffolding. But
I think we've got time for one more question.
This is sort of to all of you in general. I'm really curious as sort of either as just artists or Asian American artists, and as a writer, you are technically doing an art as well. What's the difference? Yeah, exactly. I am curious to know where you're sort of like, where in your careers or in your respective careers, you get the chance to tell the stories that you want to tell. I know that a lot of like times as either an artist or a writer, you sort of are constrained to the rules or the sort of framing that you're set upon by a company or by a writer or something like that. But how often and in what sort of situations either have you been able to tell your own stories, the stories that you wanted to tell, or what kind of stories do you want to tell or hope to tell in the future?
Well, I'm self-published, so I
Yeah,
just do what I want. But yeah, no, I think I just wanted to tell like Asian-centric stories, you know. And the great thing about Kickstarters is you can do whatever you want as long as you have a strong pitch. You know, people rally behind it, and the community will come behind, you know, support it. So I think, especially now, it's a lot easier than it was back then to find an audience, especially since there's so many niche markets. And Kickstarter does a great job of just finding those niche markets and marketing to them. So, say whatever stories you want to tell them, and just you'll find an audience as long as your message is true and you really believe what you're saying.
Where can you find your work?
Oh yeah,
Instagram?
yeah, you guys have an Instagram, Kickstarter.
Monkey and Peach Comics.
Yeah, thank you.
But there's a lot of really good indie books out there now, and you know, it's because all the diversity and the success of a lot of the indies has really, you know, brought the whole industry up, and it's, you know, I think the big companies are going to be in decline. You know, the only reason Marvel and DC exists is to maintain the IPs, and you know, that they've got all these hundreds of characters that have a lot of public recognition, and in making movies and financing movies, that means an awful lot. You know, if millions of people already know who Wonder Woman is, then, you know, getting the financing is a lot easier than funding, you know, Potato Salad Man, or anything else. And, you know, that's the facts of life. A lot of, you know, which has led to this weird thing that, like in Hollywood, there are people now funding comics so they could they could use that as springboards for movies. Because, you know, all the studios have found that, you know, this is a gold mine of source material, and that's what, you know, San Diego has turned into. You know, it's this, everyone, the entire movie and TV and game industry goes to San Diego and they're mining the comic stuff. And that's where they roll out all the new stuff also. But boy, there's some of this new indie stuff, you know, especially by women, is amazing. You know, what's that one, Guts, by Tegelmeyer? Wow, you know, she's like amazing. And there's more and more of it, you know.
Yeah, I think, you know, like growing up, I always wanted to draw, you know, Power Man, Iron Fist, Spider-Man, like every other kid. But then when I went to college, I think like most kids that go to college, your world expands immediately. And you realize there's so much more out there than just guys in spandex, you know. So, and that's when I started really realizing that, you know, I was crushed when I found out Snake Eyes was white, honestly, you know. You know, like that broke my heart, because I always just assumed that he's got to be Chinese, you know. And they got to give us that guy, you know, like, give us one, you know. And then, so when I was in college, it became very important to me to make stories revolving around people that looked like me too. So I actually decided then that I didn't want to draw for Marvel or DC. And I wanted to make my own stories. And so I actually first made a Chinatown gangster story, which in San Diego I met all these Hollywood guys. And I actually, one of the worst things I had to do was, it got pretty far, and I was talking with the agent for like Johnny Depp and everything, and Johnny, in Team Johnny. And I had to meet him at San Diego one year, and he was like, hey man, I'm really interested in your story, but, you know, I'm gonna be the hero, right? I was just like, oh man. Oh my God, you know? Yeah, you know, cause like, and I was just like, oh, Johnny Depp is really cool too, you know? I'm like, sorry man, like, this is a Chinatown story, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
I
see,
got, you know,
that's-
like, and then I got a call, I still remember this because I was working, so I went to school, I ended up becoming a graphic designer for fashion. And I remember on my lunch break, I got a call from Platinum Studios. And the guy called me, he's like, yo, Jerry, you know, we really like you, but you gotta understand, like, the best friend can be Asian, the girlfriend can be Asian, the bad guy can be Asian, but you know the hero's gonna be white, right? And I was just like, no, I can't do it, I'm sorry.
Well, see, that's, you have to understand that, like, with Snake Eyes, I wanted to keep him, not to reveal anything about him until they foisted Storm Shadow on me. And I realized, okay, the only Asian character in the whole G.I. universe is the bad guy. And I said, that's fucked up. So I figured, well, I won't tell them at Hasbro, but I'm going to change him into a good guy over the course of a year. You know, and he's going to be totally badass, and the only way that I can make that work is to have Snake Eyes be the white guy, right? And that's how I did it, you know.
Well, see, you're not allowed, I know the answer to this, that Larry's probably just, you know, skipping over. But I remember when you told me about Storm Shadow, his character is actually one of the most involved characters. He's one of the deeper characters in the G.I. Joe universe because, well, thanks to you, you had him, actually, he's like a spy in Cobra.
Right.
And he's actually not
Part of Cobra.
No, he joins, he joins Cobra to find out who killed the Horde Master, you know. And so he's undercover there, you know. But there's also, you know, there's all this emotional stuff between him and Snake Eyes and all that. So, you know, and the central theme of G.I. Joe has always been about camaraderie, redemption, and the futility of revenge. It's not about jumping out of airplanes with knives in your teeth. You know? The core fantasy is about loyalty. You know, that, you know, no matter what happens, if you're in trouble, Snake Eyes will come and get you. You know? And that bond between those two characters, Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow, is very strong and very compelling. And I've always tried to play with that. So the Snake Eyes, Storm Shadow, and Scarlet, to me, are the core, and Stalker. They're the four characters that really hold it together, you know. And only one of them's white. But you know, you're always running into that thing. You know, when I did Iron Fist, you know, I went back to Marvel and I said, you know, I'd like to do some other stuff other than Iron Fist. You know, and they said, well, but you can only do that kung fu stuff. So that really pissed me off. And one day I come to bring some pages into Marvel, and Howard Chaykin is standing in front of the door, and he's directing people to go across the street to Seaboard Atlas. And I said, well, why should I do that? And Howard says, well, they'll double your rate. I was making $25 a page. This was in 1973 or something like that. I had, because I had gotten a $2 raise, my starting rate was $23 a page for finished pencils, and I could barely do one page a day. So I could, if I was really busting my chops, I could make about $125 a week, which even in 1973, I could do better flipping burgers at Mickey D's. Right? But hey, I was doing a Marvel comic, you know? But, so I go across the street, and they say, yeah, we'll give you $50 a page. And I went, wow, you know? So I said, well, what can I do that's not Iron Fist? I said, I'll do a comic about a blonde barbarian. And that's what I did. But, you know, we run into this thing where we're like, we would like to do, you know, an Asian character, but then all of a sudden you realize you're being locked into that, you know, which I thought was just as bad, you know, that, you know, they said, well, you can only do the Asian characters.
Oh, yeah.
That's, you know. And I wanted to prove to them that I could do everything else. You know. Is that a wrap?